This is question 3 for the critical reflection. How did your production skills develop throughout the process? So at the start of the process, we actually didn't know much about production really. So we'd done a few preliminary tasks and I'd done some drone editing videos elsewhere, but I'd never used Premiere Pro or a proper camera or a gimbal. So it was actually really interesting starting this process. So for example, this first shot we used, which was actually one of my favourite shots as well personally. I'd known how to do this before because I've done drone videos, and I think using the grid lines really helped me with this, so I could keep the path and the road in the centre frame, and then making the car really visible so we can see that Maddie's travelling somewhere. And then for the next couple of shots we used the Osmo Pocket, which is a little gimbal. And using the Osmo Pocket in these next couple of shots was actually quite difficult because we had Marcus following the Maddie walking down, and we had a problem where we could hear both of their footsteps on the gravel, which obviously is not what we want. So we tried to have Marcus walk as slow as possible really and still follow her and try and be as light-footed as possible. So that was something which we didn't realise originally we had to do. So developing that skill is important, and being aware of noise in other scenes. And for example, a couple of the next scenes, the house we were filming had some other people there, so we had to kind of make sure they were quiet, and just things we had to take into account which we didn't really think about before in terms of the planning section of the coursework. So these next couple of shots of the drone on top of her walking into the house, I actually got this idea from watching a classmates thriller, and I thought it's actually a really cool shot to have, so I decided to put it in there. And I think the framing of that is perfectly as well, because we've got the roof lined up perfectly straight, which was also using the grid lines, which I've used multiple times, and we decided to use for both the drone and the Osmo Pocket. So everything was kind of where we want it in terms of centre frame or left of frame, if that makes sense. So the next couple of shots, we got her walking into the house. And I think it was important as well that we synced up the sound of her knocking on the door, because that was another thing we also didn't have to think about really when we were kind of toying around with what clip goes where. We totally lost sync of where the sound was. As it became detached, and so we learned that we had to link that by right-clicking on Premiere Pro. So we did that for most of the clips now, so we make sure that the sound is perfectly timed. So when she knocks at the door, we hear the knocks and we see the knock at the same time, which is obviously really important. And then a couple of these other shots here, so we decided actually after doing this shot of her walking in once, we thought it doesn't look good, it's a bit too slow and not enough cuts, so we decided to film it from both angles at different times, so different occasions, and then cut them together so it looked like it was all in one time, and that makes sense. And then for example, things like these zooms we have, like when the door closes, we learned to do these only after our reshoot. Actually we learned that we could do these, which I think was actually really good because it allowed us to kind of make more eerie feelings, sort of by zooming in and by like turning when she walks up the stairs. I think these are also like really important small things in the production that kind of amplify the thriller. And then we've got some other things when she comes upstairs, like this camera transition that we decided on right at the time really. We didn't think we were going to use it, but we saw an opportunity to use the mirror as she walks into Mila's room upstairs, to use the mirror to reflect her. So we could, the camera kind of pans across and then it's the mirror, so we see her but she's on the opposite side of the room, but it works perfectly because it's just, the transition just works as the wall is only shown briefly and then she's back in the room and in the frame again. Then we have this series of fast cuts where she's upstairs looking for the knife, and this is probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest, few cuts we have in our piece, because this is when suspense really picks up and we want to connote that to the readers that this is the key moment, her finding the knives in her boyfriend's house. And originally when we did this, we found it was actually quite difficult to get the camera angle because we were rotating the gimbal to kind of show her facial expressions like this. So that did take a couple of tries, but once we understood what we had to do, it became a lot easier. And then at this point as well, we have the sound kind of syncing up to when she picks up the knife. I think that's really important as well because it helps signify that's obviously a key moment in the storyline. And this light on the left-hand side of the lamp on the left-hand side where she is picking up the knife, we initially started with it off, but just there was too much noise, and I think it kind of helps kind of make her hands brighter, if that makes sense, and this half her face is lit and you can just see more detail really with that lamp being on. And then after this, we see her running to the bathroom. We've got this really good tracking shot that we decided to use of where she's through the corridor, and then as soon as she goes to the bathroom, we follow her. And I think that's also a really, really good shot because we get up extremely close. It's an extreme close up, and it kind of makes you feel uncomfortable and be able to understand kind of the pain she's in after finding knives in her boyfriend's house. And then so in this next shot, actually, we used a lot of vignette where she's on the phone, because I think this is one of the key moments. She's in the bathroom, it's dark, and she doesn't know what to do. So we decided to bring suspense by adding vignette like that. And then this last couple shots of the of Red picking up the phone, we decided to use the same shot but 2 different angles for this, because we thought just it would provide a better pace really to the editing, which is kind of what we're going for with continuity. And then that line really amplified where we turned the music down a lot, so you believe me now. And these were all things that we couldn't really think about doing or didn't even think about at the start of the project, but as we kind of went on and watched it and realised, oh, we've got to do this and we've got to do that in order to make it better. And then this last shot, for example, this was a hyperlapse from my drone, which I didn't even realise I could do until I did some research about the top modes and features I could use on my drone. And this is what came up, and I think this is actually really important because with the sunset and the hyperlapse is showing the kind of eeriness of everything going from light to black, a bit like how Maddie's relationship with Milo has gone from light to dark, and then we have the tides will show up. And I think the way the storyline is now, it's kind of the best way to end it there, because the rest of the movie can continue. So overall, our production skills really improved over the time. So using the cameras, we got a lot more creative with kind of angles, how steady we were holding it, and just positioning of where to be, because things we initially thought of when we actually did them, they didn't work. So it was all about kind of trial and error within that stage of the process. So I think overall it was a really great experience in terms of production. I've learned a lot about how to make short films and how to actually understand how to make them, which is kind of the main thing of the coursework's about, really, to develop your understanding. So that is it for this question. So thanks for listening.